Here.
Alderman Jacob.
Here.
Alderman Winger. Alderman Catalano. Alderman Sismarski.
Here.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Here.
Alderman Woods.
Here.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Here.
Okay, next, I declare quorum. Next is approval of minutes of the meeting February 13, 2014. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Next is report and recommendation, 143, 149, 153, 159 Front Street Facade Renovation Program. Mr. Forrest.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome, sir.
Well, we finally reached this point. What you've got in your packet is an agreement that provides a detailed procedure whereby the city is to provide up to $200,000 in funding in the form of a grant for improvement of building facades at 143, 149, and 153, 159 Front Street. It's been determined that these two buildings are among the most visible to travelers passing through Wooddale by automobile and commuter train, and that the appearance of these buildings does not necessarily create a positive first impression of our downtown center district. Staff has been working with the owners of these two buildings for approximately 2 years, beginning with attendance at a design charrette at the Illinois chapter of the American Institute of Architects, culminating in the city hiring an architect to prepare construction plans for the proposed facade renovation. Several design ideas were reviewed by the Streetscape Committee and the City Council until a final concept was approved and the architectural plans prepared. It's been determined that the prairie-style design utilized by the Metro Train Station and the Wooddale Bank and Trust will be the continuing design theme as we move forward with our downtown revitalization efforts. The city attorney prepared a draft agreement and a meeting was held with the property owners. There were a few revisions made to the original agreement to address some concerns of the owners, and the attached document is what was submitted to the property owners for signature. There is one minor change in this, which I'll explain when we get there, but one of the owners has signed the agreement. The second owner is reviewing some additional materials that he requested from the structural engineer concerning the structural integrity of his building prior to him signing the agreement. And he just wanted some reassurance from the structural engineer who did the design plans that the front of his building was structurally capable of accepting this new load that's going to be placed on it. But we worked with the architect, and it's all going to be lightweight framing that builds this facade. Lightweight materials are going to be used. There are going to be concrete piers and columns, supporting columns, installed in front of the buildings, and the way the roof is designed, most of the load is going to be carried by those columns. So there'll be minimal structural loading placed on the existing buildings. So the structural engineer did prepare a letter of opinion to the owner of the building. I gave that to him. He reviewed it. He seems fine with that. And just so you know, immediately before the construction, once the contracts are let and just before construction starts, it's our intention to have a third-party inspector go through both buildings very thoroughly and conduct an inspection, make notes of any abnormalities in the building. There's a crack in the foundation here, this is here, this is here. So all of that information will be of record prior to the construction starting. What that'll prevent would be either one of the building owners coming back to us a year later and saying, well, oh, now I've got this crack in my foundation that I never had before. We'll have that structural report and says, well, yes, you did. It's noted right here, dated a week before the project started. So that's always been our intention, and we will be doing that. Upon final approvals, the city is going to need to grant easements for a portion of the new structure that will encroach into the city-owned Front Street parking lot. This is going to occur across the entire frontage of 143 and 149 and will include an easement approximately 90 feet wide by 7 feet deep. The easement for 153, 159 will be about 12 feet wide and will range in 7 feet in depth to 0. That building sits a little bit of an angle, and our Front Street property line continues perpendicular with Irving Park ending at Walnut. So since this building is tipped, only a small portion of that building is going to need the easement. was the recommendation of the city attorney that we go with a permanent easement. That's probably the easiest and cleanest way to allow this project to happen. Again, the concrete piers, the supporting columns are going to be located on our Front Street property. So part of the building is going to overhang onto our property. That's why we need to do that easement. This agreement is structured so that the owners will need to meet certain requirements and deadlines prior to the city dispersing any funds. And in addition, prior to the start of the project, prior to the city dispersing any funds, both owners will be required to provide proof of funds for their portion of the project. I've spoken with both of them. They both agreed to do that. They have no problem with that. So that's another thing. We are going to be sure that they have their portion of the money available before we move forward dispersing any funds. The first payment will be made per the agreement which you all had for review. The first payment is made as what's typically referred to in the business as a materials advance. It allows the contractor to go out, buy the materials, get started on the job. The second payment would be dispersed once the project is approximately one-half completed. Again, that typically happens after all the rough framing is done and inspected and before things are enclosed and covered up. And then the third payment would be due upon completion of the project and once all the as-built drawings have been accepted by the city and what is in place is what was designed by the architect and called for by the plans. After the intersection safety improvements are completed, it is staff's intention to bring forward a redesigned configuration for the Front Street parking area, which is kind of phase 2 of this project. And we'll kind of complete that section of town in compliance with the town center business district's approach of wanting to make it pedestrian-friendly, allowing outdoor cafes, that sort of a thing. So I've already spoken with the city engineer. He's given me some ballpark figures, but we will have to narrow that down, but it doesn't make any sense to do that till after the Irving Park and Wooddale Road improvements are completed. So the one small question, or one small change on the agreement that was inserted by the city attorney since your packets went out, if you are on page 2 of the agreement, section 2, number 3, where it talks about conditions of entitlement to the facade payments, number 3 says a final color scheme for all facade areas, including the roof, wood trim, and masonry, shall have been reviewed by the city's streetscape committee. And I had the city attorney add, and are subject to final approval by the city. So the previous draft of this put the approval only with the streetscape committee, but forgot to include the council, so we had that added. And basically, that's it. I've spoken to both owners a couple of times in the last week. They're both ready to go, so I'll entertain any questions you might have.
So, do we need a motion this evening for this to move forward, or? I know we've talked about it many levels, many locations.
Yeah.
Mr. Murmas.
One of the things too, if we've got things that were left out or requests that the council wants to see in here, tonight would be the opportunity to mention those things. We can go back to the city attorney, make sure we've got a final, but yeah, we'd like direction on moving forward pending any additions you guys have.
Okay. Questions? Alderman Roy Wesley.
2 questions. The first one is, when is he gonna give you the signed contract at one owner? Has this been a while that you've been waiting for this?
Mr. Forrest.
It's been a few weeks, but it took me a while to get the letter from the structural engineer that he wanted, and we communicate pretty well. There's a slight language barrier there, which sometimes can create some questions that might normally not occur, but
Good. Thank you. My second question.
Sure, go ahead.
My second question is, what is the next step on this then?
well, the next step would be for the city council to approve a final version of this agreement. I'll present it to them for their signature. At that point, they will hire their contractor. They'll apply for their permit, and we'll get the project going. I mean, we'll have to wait for the weather to break a little bit.
You said 2, that's 3.
I know, but
Go ahead.
I haven't read this agreement totally. Is there a time frame in this? I know, thanks. Is there a time frame in this agreement of when they need to start this and when they need to finish it? And
Well, the agreement right now has a 21-day period in there. All permits, licenses, and easements required for the facade improvements must have been secured and paid for within 21 days of the execution of this agreement, unless otherwise extended and agreed to by the parties. For us to get the surveys done, have the city council approve the easements, is probably going to take longer than 21 days. But, so that, there's some flexibility with that. As far as completing the project, their contractor has estimated it probably 60 days at the longest, from the time he starts to completion of the project.
so it won't be a 5-year project that, oh, don't have the money, you gotta wait. We won't
No.
have that.
No.
Okay?
Alderman Sismarski? Alderman Eugene Wesley?
I have one question, you might have hit the question. To start the project, is this going to interfere with the construction of Wooddale and Irving?
No.
With the construction, so frontage road, I mean, the cutoff will still be in play for our residents?
Correct.
All right, because I just see a nightmare of traffic happening.
Good point.
And then the other question is, since the city is contributing to this fund, what is substantial completion? Is that in a contract with the owner of these property, or is the city in the contract saying if they don't complete it, is there liquidated damage, is a house's contract? I understand the agreement here, but I don't understand the contract method here. Okay, the city is putting in a lot of money in this project, and believe me, I think it's a great product to go for it. I just wanna make sure we are legally covering, and they paying for all the permits and that. There ain't gonna be no waivers, they aren't gonna come to us and say, well, since the city, we're gonna waive this permit, because it ain't a nonprofit organization, so we don't waive permits for businesses except for nonprofit organization or other taxing bodies. So we aren't going to come back here and they're going to say, oh, well, since the city is in part, we want to waive these permits. We are not going to waive any permits fees. Am I correct?
Mr. Forrest?
I can't really speak to that. Neither one of them have asked me if we're going to waive permit fees or not. They certainly would have a right to come to the city council and request a waiver or partial waiver of permit fees. That's certainly their right as residents and businessmen in the community, but that's up to you as the city council to decide what you want to do with that. As far as the completion, our final payment, the way the payments are structured is 30% is paid up front, 30% is paid when the project's half completed, 40%, or the bulk of the payment, is not going to be paid per the agreement until the improvements have been completed and the proper waivers or releases of liens from each contractor and subcontractor have been submitted to the city, and that all requirements of paragraphs 1 through 7 have been met, which means they've got to complete the project, give us the as-built plans, and get it finished. And once we start the project, they're not going to want it to drag on forever because, again, there's viable operating businesses in those buildings. So
And
once it gets started, they want to get it done.
I have one follow-up.
Go ahead.
As-built plans, do we review the as-built plan, and what if it ain't built as-built plan, that they make some changes without the as-built plans that we agreed on, the design and all that, this is a design that we're going with? What if they change it? Who's liable in that case, knowing that we already put out the money for this project?
That's why we have building inspectors that go out and check periodically during course of construction. I mean, our inspectors go out. We don't just go out and inspect jobs that are in process when we get called to do an inspection, again, depending how busy we are. This, which would be considered a high-profile project, staff will be stopping by there at a regular basis just to check on the construction. If for some reason they might run into a condition that's hidden underneath something that hasn't been opened up yet. If for some reason part of the project would need to be revised or they'd need to use, somehow change it, what happens is we have the architect come out, he looks at the existing conditions, and then he would redesign the plan accordingly.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. John, seeing that the city's putting up all this money, do we have anything that we can put in as far as language for the signage that the businesses that will be in this establishment will be able to use? The reason I'm saying that is because if you look at what's there now, I mean, the signage is pretty bad. You know, you got Mescas throwing up, you know, these signs that, you know, how much their product costs. Can we put any language in there in order to upgrade the signage, as long as we're spending this kind of money on the facade?
Yeah, the actual building plans show what the permanent signs will look like. Those will be mounted on the front of the buildings. As far as any additional signage, at this point, we can put whatever we want to in there and present it to them. If you want to put certain restrictions, I mean, there are restrictions in the sign ordinance now. To be honest with you, TJ's, the liquor store probably is exceeding his allowable signage. I've had him take signs down before.
Right.
But once this is completed, yeah, we don't want it to look like
Right, like it does now.
a poster board that keeps getting laminated posters over and over and over.
Yeah, so as long as we can do that, that'd be great. Thanks.
Yeah, just, I'm gonna add to John, I mean, that's built in, that there's electronic signs mounted to the front of the building to eliminate all that.
Yeah, but I'm worried about putting a paper sign up in your windows.
Well, they'll enforce it to make it look good.
Yeah.
Alderman Jacob.
Two questions. John, the contractor on this, is that totally up to them?
Yes.
Okay, and second, you kind of touched upon it earlier, let's say a year down the road, there is a crack in the foundation and it wasn't noted, who would they be going after, the contractor, or could they still come after us?
Well, primarily, I would think the contractor. That's probably a question that
Yeah.
Mr. Bond would ask. But that's why I think it's important that we go over the buildings very thoroughly just prior to construction.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, just a comment, that's part of the reason that we structured this the way we did. To stay out of it, we're not the contractor, we have nothing to do with it other than granting them some money to improve their facility. John taking the pictures and going through with the engineer is just an extra safeguard. We all know if somebody wants to sue, they just write a list of names and they sue everybody. So we've protected the city as much as we can. Mayor, please.
John, as far as the 30% right after the permits have been granted, I take it the building owners are also putting up 30% at the same time? I mean, it's not just the city first and them later?
No.
Alderman Wesley. Roy Wesley.
Thanks. We go to 30% here. Have the city received a bank letter of credit from these developers? Was not saying that they're halfway into the project and all of a sudden, boom, they run into problems and don't have no money.
Mr. Forrest.
Now, I mentioned during my presentation that prior to construction, both building owners have agreed to give us written evidence of the proof of funds that they have their share.
To the finance department?
Well, sure, we'll be sure the finance department has a copy on record. Finance department, city attorney,
Okay,
and then it'll be in the permit file.
okay, thank you.
Okay. No other questions? I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Alderman Lazara.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky.
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Yes.
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
Yes.
Motion carries. Next, items to be considered at future meetings, citation policies to be determined. Anything we want to, Alderman Lazar?
Yeah, I'd like to see the Potter Street, also, especially the railroad side, on the agenda.
Potter Street. Anything else? Okay. Mr. Murmas?
If Alderman Lazar can clarify that, because I know that in the CIP discussion, we talked about the initiative that was funded to get that started, which would start after May 1. So what are we looking for before May 1?
I'm looking for the progress as far as, the trees that we were talking about on the railroad side behind the factories, and I think John,
Yeah, we can give a status report. I don't think any council action's needed. We'll give an update.
yeah, I'd like to at
Okay.
least have an update.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
I'd like to call the Public Health Safety Judicial Committee to order. Let the record show that same people are present. Need a motion to approve the minutes, February 13, 2014.
Make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. I'll turn it over to the chief for open alcohol.
Thank you. Coming here tonight regarding Chapter 14 of the municipal code that deals with miscellaneous offenses. Right now, there's a part in that code that deals with public intoxication and the ability for the officers to take action when someone is intoxicated and disorderly in public. One of the limitations of our current ordinance is there's nothing in there addressing open alcohol in public places. So this is kind of driven from it is driven from the patrol side. They've had some encounters over the last year or so with some people drinking behind businesses and, not with the permission of the business owner, but in an alley behind a business or behind a shopping center. But they weren't necessarily in an intoxicated state, so you kind of have that gray area where, they might be drinking in public and, in the alley, let's say it could be sitting behind the target drinking without their permission, and it might not rise to a level of criminal trespass, but they're not intoxicated, so basically all we can do is ask them to comply. So what we're looking for is an amendment to the ordinance to prohibit open alcohol on public property and in the place where the public is generally invited. And the goal of this is for exterior, throughout town where people could possess at this time. It is banned at the train station. There was an ordinance passed a few years ago that banned it there, because even though Metro allows it on their trains, the city took action to ban it there. So this would just assist the officers on the street with being able to take some action. Certainly our first encounter with someone is probably gonna be seeking compliance, and that's, generally our goal, but we really have no teeth to stick behind if they don't wanna comply or if they're a repeat offender, so.
Okay. I'll open it for questions.
I don't have a question, I just want to make a motion to approve this ordinance.
Second.
Okay. We'll still go with the question.
That's fine.
Mike Simersky.
Chief, how does this amendment work? The Park District already has an no open alcohol. Our forest preserves also, and without a permit, I believe. I don't know.
Correct, and this would allow for enforcement on city-owned property or other public properties. And then there's an exception for if there's an event, like a public event where alcohol is allowed, that, certainly our goal is to not prohibit any of that type of stuff, but just the nuisance complaints that we've been having around town, so.
Thanks.
Anything else?
No, that's fine.
Let's go. Alderman Lazar.
Hey, Greg, can you briefly tell us what happens to a person that is caught doing this?
This falls under a local ordinance citation is what it would be. There's no, it would be going to Addison Field Court if they chose to contest the citation. And it's basically a civil offense, which requires a preponderance of the evidence compared to proof beyond a reasonable doubt. But basically, it would be a citation. They're not gonna be spending, the night like Otis in the jail cell. The only time we would, if someone is a danger to themselves, such as we don't think they should be released on their own, you know, they're to that level of intoxication. We have called out the fire department in the past and done that, or called a relative or a family member to come and, you know, get them safely to a location out of the public, so.
Do you know what this would cost as far as a fine? Is it $100, $50?
The fine would start at $50, and then, similar to like a public intox, probably the first time would be 50, but after that, we generally, it would go to 100 the next time. And then if it goes to court, the judge can decide on the final amount, but we would set an initial amount on the citation, so.
So would this go under permanent record?
No, it's basically a petty offense. It wouldn't go on a criminal record.
Okay.
It's not a misdemeanor. It's on the city local ordinance.
Right, thank you.
Oh, Alderman, what's your name? Jacobs.
Chief, one question. If you gave someone a citation and then later during the day, you got a call and it was the same person, is it another citation? Is it taking him down to the jail cell? I mean, what would happen to a person if that happened?
It would probably be another citation, and what we've done in the past is if we've had, there's some businesses in town, or most, that wouldn't want something like this happening behind their business. So if we have someone that's a repeat offender causing a problem, let's say over by Georgetown or something, we'd work with Georgetown to get a trespass warning, and then if they violated the trespass warning, and we keep copies of those on file, then they could be subject to criminal trespass or something like that. So the goal is, and what we've seen even with the public intoxication or other things, once you take action, there might be some repeats, but usually, you know, it's a little while down the road, so.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, no other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, request for a liquor license.
Thanks.
I didn't,
I'm sorry?
I didn't turn it over to you, but
Oh, I
I
thought-
I will now.
Okay. Last week, there was a letter presented to council where the restaurant at 303 East Irving submitted a letter wanting to add a liquor license. Council's direction was to come up with to review that and also make contact with the business owner to find out exactly what type of license they were seeking. There were two licenses that could have applied to them. One was the Class R that they are applying for. It would be authorizing the licensee to sell or offer for sale at retail alcoholic liquor on the premises where sold and only with meals. The other one they could have gone for that would have possibly fit was Class W, which is a beer and wine license. But their desire was to, with the request for margaritas, that would not be covered under beer and wine, so they have to go with the Class R license. The fees for those are the same, and that's what they're seeking tonight.
Okay, questions? I'm not gonna start with you because you're gonna make a motion right away. Alderman Jacobs.
I would make a motion that we approve.
Second.
Okay. Alderman Wesley.
I have just two questions. Mayor, maybe you could help me out on this. What is the price difference for beer and wine versus hard liquor? I believe this is hard liquor. Is there, I thought there was a price difference.
He's got it.
And actually, I misspoke. The initial license is exactly the same. The renewal for a Class R is $1,500. The renewal for a Class W is $1,250. So it's $250 extra on a renewal for a Class R. But the actual,
5,000 for the first.
the actual first licenses are $2,500 for Class R and for Class W in the code.
So that's hard liquor.
Correct.
Okay. My follow-up, one more follow-up question. Is there a requirement of how many seats must be in the premises in a liquor license to be having it? I mean, I'm on board with this, but I just want to make sure we follow the guidelines there.
There's nothing in the liquor code that I've seen that requires a certain number of seats for a Class R license.
not under our.
Okay. Oh, you. Mayor?
Chief, going through the codes and everything, I know for the outdoor facility, they require, if there's an outdoor function, they require bathrooms and whatnot. And restaurants, really, I don't see anything that says anything to that effect. I know this restaurant does not have a public washroom up front.
Yeah.
That would be like a question for Mr. Bond. I should have called him, but.
From my knowledge, nothing in the liquor code covers restaurants or anything, possibly under the building or the public health, DuPage Health Department. John, are you aware of? DuPage Health would govern that.
More and more I think of it, I don't think we have a place that sells alcohol that doesn't have a washroom to the public,
It's not really.
so. Do you wanna address that? Jack?
Yeah, the state plumbing code does require that any establishment that has, where you're able to sit down and have a meal, has to provide a public bathroom. There is a public bathroom there. To be honest with you, off the top of my head, I can't remember if there's one or two in there available, but again, that's something that the health department would govern, so if there was an issue with it, I'm sure the health department would have made us aware of it. But I know there's at least one in there. And,
Okay. All right. No other questions? All in favor of giving the, R license? All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Any items to be considered future meetings? I would like to bring up, these e-cigarettes before we, before Eileen, I meant that she spends a lot of time on, putting something together, about these e-cigarettes in public places, like restaurants and stuff. So, I wanna pull the council to see if they're, wanna talk about this, because it's a new thing, so. So, we'll start with Lazar and work our way down if you wanna.
I mean, I don't know a lot about them. I would say, are they giving off the same toxins, I guess you might want to say, as cigarettes?
water vapor.
Don't keep raising your hand, just.
Sorry. I think there's some conflicting views, but the argument is that it's a water vapor that it gives off. I know the FDA is looking to get into it. Chicago just recently passed a ban to make it banned in similar places that tobacco is banned. There's talk about a state law, but I haven't heard of one passing yet, so we're kind of in, it's kind of a gray area right now, whether, I haven't seen any definitive studies what comes out. The manufacturers say that it's water vapor that comes out, and certainly whatever's coming out has to be less than secondhand smoke, but I don't know if there are any. So I think you were looking to see, do you want us to put in the research to see on that, or, see what's pending statewide, because I wouldn't be surprised at some point if the state
Yeah, I
takes
would
some
say let's
action.
see what's pending statewide.
Alderman Jacobs?
Yeah, we should discuss it, I think.
What?
The question was to discuss this further, yes, I would say yes.
Okay.
There's a quick question.
Alderman Woods, you still want to discuss this and go further with it, or?
I would wait to see what
Just-
pops up. I mean, do we have people complaining? Is it an issue, or are we just researching because we like to research?
Another report.
It was brought to my attention that someone had a concern about it in a restaurant, and that's why we thought we'd see if there was interest in even pursuing it here. If there's not, we won't spend the time. If we do, it'll probably be quite a bit of research, which is fine, but it was brought up to be, see if there was interest here and even looking at it, so.
Alderman Smarsky?
Yeah, I would just like you to look into it too, because just like a non-alcoholic beer, can't give it to kids. I don't, is there an age limit on that also? Is it 18?
Yeah, and there's a state law to ban 18 too.
I would think if there's no smoking, there's no smoking no matter what. So I'd look into that.
Okay. Alderman Wesley.
My opinion is, I'd like to see if the state comes out with one before we
So,
revise it, but, I mean, if the council wants to do it, I just think it's a waste of time until the state decides what they wanna do, because I'll tell you, the state overrides our ordinance, so.
so how about if we wait, 6 months and see if the state does anything and then bring it back up? Is that fair?
I concur.
Okay. Yes, Alderman Jacobs.
I'd like to add something to be considered at future meetings. I talked to the chief about this a little bit. I'd like to discuss bringing back bike patrols, officers being more presence in the communities.
Have we even had bikes before?
Sorry, I keep raising. This was brought up several years ago, I know, to council, and there was no desire to proceed with it.
That was because we had the reservoir.
Right. Well, there's certainly a number of opportunities with it, and I could come back with some cost estimates, and, you know, there's cost, training, and some other things that would be required to look at as far as this. But I'm a supporter of getting the guys out of the cars. We do quite a few foot patrols over in the high residential areas, but there's an opportunity there, and I'd be happy to look at it.
Maybe it's something to look in Georgetown area and
Sure.
something like that too. Okay. One second.
That's our liability going up on that one.
Fitness
Can we
program.
look at that possibly for this year?
Sure.
Okay. Alderman Smarsky?
I'd like to ask the chief, I've seen in other towns during my work hours, do we have anything out there that says these no handgun signs? So I've been seeing them on a lot of,
It's on the door as you walk in.
well, I've seen them on a lot of businesses right in the front, says do not, a circle with no handgun. Do we make that mandatory, or do they get those issued to them, or?
No, that's through private vendors. The city has purchased and put them on all of our doors like we're required to do, and I know the schools and the park district and that have. But beyond that, it's up to each individual business whether they want to allow it or ban it. And if it's not a prohibited place, well, even like City Hall is a prohibited place, but by statute, we have to put the signs up, which is why we did. But as far as, you know, Joe Business down the street,
That's
if
what
he
I'm
wants
asking.
to allow it, he just doesn't put anything up. But if he puts it up and someone goes in there with it, then they're gonna be in violation, and they could get their card, consequences for their card.
Yeah, the only reason I asked that is because of the robberies that have been going on with the tobacco shops, and so, okay, thanks.
And that sign is a state mandated sign. It has, it has to be a 4x6 sign that, if someone does not want allowed in their businesses.
Okay. Anything else? No? Need a motion for adjournment?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd like to call the Public Works Committee to order. Roll call, note that the same people are here. I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from February 13, 2014. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Opposed? That passes. Report and recommendation, IDOT agreement for intersection safety improvements at Grove Avenue, Sherwood Drive, which is also Illinois 83, and of course Sherwood. I'm going to turn this over to Matt, but before I do, I'm just going to say that I think for the money, that this would be a really good thing for us to do, especially the fact that we have a lot of high schoolers that are crossing in that intersection to go to Fenton. Matt, go ahead. You want to take
I'm
this?
going to turn this over to Jeremy, our contracts manager, who's been
Jeremy?
working on this project.
Jeremy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What you have in front of you is a cost participation agreement to participate in IDOT's highway safety project at Illinois 83 and Sherwood and Grove. Grove is the east side street, and Sherwood is the west side street on 83 there. The project will cost the city $7,331. which is 2.5% of the total project cost at that intersection. Bensonville's actually paying the same amount we're paying on the east side for the Grove side street. And the engineering plans have also been reviewed by the city engineer, and they did recommend that we move forward with this agreement. A few of the things they're doing, they're installing new traffic signals, including 1 per lane as the new standard is, mast arms to replace some of the old traffic signal poles. They're reinstalling and relocating some of the pedestrian push buttons and timers and those sorts of things. And that goes along with a little strip of sidewalk they're putting in on the northwest corner of the Wooddale side of the Sherwood side. And it's just a little, kind of a corner cut sidewalk to access the crosswalk there to cross 83 itself. And they're also, the traffic signal controller logic is gonna be the same, so the traffic's gonna flow just as it does today. And that's kind of a rundown of the project, so.
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Just take a question from Alderman Zemansky.
If you look into, you need to talk to IDOT, do you talk to them?
Go ahead, Jim.
Yes, I spoke with their engineer, yes.
Could you look into, or would it matter, in other states that I've driven through doing my work, when you're approaching the stoplights, a lot of trucks barrel through that intersection, cars included, but they have lights that flash further back. I don't know how many feet it is, but back there announcing that the light's gonna change red, so they'll slow down before they get that intersection.
Okay, some sort of,
Especially with the hill over Irving. It's a preventative,
Yeah, that's a good idea, Mike. Alderman Jacobs?
2 things, Jeremy. Did you say the timing's gonna stay the same on them, or is it?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
yes, that's correct.
Go ahead, Alderman.
One of my requests would be, I actually have gotten a lot of complaints from people, going to school to Fenton, that the light, it takes real long, and then when it does turn green, it turns red real quick, so not too many people could get across. And also, if you're making a left from 83, you could be sitting at that light for 3-4 lights before that arrow comes up unless you pull up far. So I don't know if there's anything we could do about the timing issue.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
I did see that the state, because it's a state route, 83, they do control the timing of the lights, so.
We talked to them about it?
Good.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. Mayor?
Actually, last year, we looked into, while we were redoing the streets over there by Royal Oaks, possibly putting in a left turn lane, because that had come up, and we were told flat out, no.
Okay, I have a second. Do you have something, Eugene?
Yeah, I have a question. The emergency vehicle pre-op installing for that, I believe there's one there already.
Go ahead, Jeremy.
Yeah, I would like to restate, I did find some new information after I wrote that memorandum. That emergency vehicle preemption system there is Bensonville's, and they're gonna basically take it off while they do the work and then put it back on when they're finished.
So my question is, in that upgrade that they're doing, is that part of our share? The numbers we look at?
Go ahead, Jeremy.
No, it's not.
Okay, so that's, I just wanna make sure we aren't paying for it because it's there already and it's Bensonville's.
Right, okay. Go ahead, Roy.
In the motion, we have a dollar amount or no? Not to exceed? I don't recall we had that in there.
Yeah, we can put that in there, right?
You have to. That's-
Okay, yeah. So
Okay,
is
I
that,
just wanna make sure it's there.
is that okay with the motioner?
It's okay.
And a seconder, not to exceed $7,331.25. Okay. All right. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. And let's see, items to be considered at future meetings, intersection safety improvement phase 3, construction supervision contract. And I'd like to have a motion for adjourn.
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned.
Oh, you want to make a comment?
Yeah, let him.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good.
I don't care. Let him.
He's giving us the check.
Casey Pacioli, business owner with Dell. Mr. Jacob Lowell was talking about motor disability and police department patrolling. Well, I have something to say, something that happened, and I want to say thank you to Chief Basta, and something that happened, I got a phone call, it was a week ago, regarding Patrolman Johnston and Zito. I got a phone call that they saw lights in the back of the shop. And so I got a phone call, I went there, and unfortunately I left the lights open. This is what I want to say, I thank you to be alert and to notice that. So there is a patrol around, and they do the job there, and I want to thank them to notice that I had to go back to the shop and turn the lights off, so I thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I call to order the Finance and Administration Committee. Let the roll call, let the minute taker take note the same people are here except for Mr. Eugene, who will be right back. Wait for- Need approval of minutes for a meeting of February 13th, 2014.
I'll make the motion.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Report recommendation for fiscal year 2015 budget. Is there a motion?
Second.
Brett? All those in- the report recommendation for fiscal year 2015.
You made a motion to approve the budget as
Yeah, I was
is.
gonna approve the budget and get out of here.
What was the second? There we go.
We got a second. Give it up, Hunter. Give it up, Hunter.
I'll try to take care of it.
Would you strike the motion then? Well, I mean, you gotta let the min,
Whoever didn't do a roll call, motion fails anyways.
I'll rescind.
Jeff has something to say.
Maybe we can make it real easy and keep the motion in play and say, does anybody have any questions? And then we could keep going.
Second.
Go ahead, Brett.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Try it.
Try to go through the front part of this as quickly as we can. A lot of this stuff will be familiar from the last couple of years. Throughout the budget, even though there's, well, 30 tabs, there's 5 main fund types. The general fund, which is the main operating account for the city, has all the operating departments, primarily in this building. Special revenue funds, those are your motor fuel tax, road and bridge, tourism, narcotics forfeiture. Capital projects, which is, the CIP, and then the equipment replacement fund, land acquisition. Enterprise funds, those are the business type activities that they're supposed to be ran like a business, self-sustaining. The water and sewer fund, commuter parking lot and sanitation fund fall into there. And then the trust and agency funds, those are monies that the city maintains and reports out, but it's not specifically property of the city, such as the police pension fund and the special service areas.
Has everyone gone through the overview part on this, and could we just go right to the numbers to move it a little faster, or? Is everyone fine with that? Except Jeff?
We can do that, just, we prepared just a couple of slides here, just for the residents at home if they want to follow along, that's all.
Okay.
Sure, I won't bore you with the accounting terminology of these then, but the fund balance has been expanded 2 fiscal years ago into 5 categories from the 1 or 2 categories that it was before. And those are the different classifications listed there. The city has 14 total funds, 6 have a proposed budget increase, 8 have a proposed decrease. Interestingly enough, last year's budget had the exact same split between 6 and 8. Capital spending, we did talk about the CIP a month ago. Spending this year is effectively flat over last year. The fiscal 15 budget, however, does include Phase 1B of the treatment plant, the first year of the Ward 2 streets, the first year of the Wooddale Irving Park safety improvements, and continued water main and drainage improvements throughout and around the city. The process, same as the last few years, each department has its own tab, narrative sheets, funding sheets, and expanded levels where they were requested are included in there. The ones that were recommended by the manager are on the green sheets in your budget book, not recommended by the manager on the pink sheets. We'd like to gain a consensus on each department or the singular funds further in the book before we move on, so we're not bouncing back and forth a lot. Begin with a very high-level review, then just start through and go through general fund, special revenue, just as they're presented in the budget book. Very big picture, everything rolled up. You can see year-over-year budget for the revenues is up about 13 million. That's largely due to the IEPA loan for the treatment plant and the money we're anticipating to receive back from the state and the feds for the safety improvements at Wooddale and Irving Park. Expenses are about where they were before, which does include the treatment plant, the aforementioned safety improvements, and the Ash Street signalization improvements. A little housekeeping when we get to the sheets for each department. Unless it's specifically otherwise noted, personnel costs are up due to increased salaries via personnel policy or collective bargaining agreement. FICA is the same at 0.765 for this year. Our IMRF rate actually fell a little bit this year, but some of the IMRF numbers might still be up due to the increase in salaries, but it's not going to be up as significantly since the rate itself did fall a little bit. As we're going through the slides, if there was a significant change, or what we determined to be a significant change, we put a reason why those changed. There might be some numbers that change, a couple $100 here, a couple $100 there. We don't list all of those out. We'll look for things that are significant or impactful to the departments as we're going through. And we encourage you to ask questions as we go through the slides, because as I said, we're trying to gain a consensus on each section before we move on. So if we ask them as we go through, we won't have to keep bouncing back and forth. High level just for the general fund. Anticipating ending the current fiscal year at a $1.87 million deficit. While that does sound like a pretty big number, that's largely attributed to the funding of the Royal Oaks project in 1 year instead of 2, and then the FEMA acquisitions, which we are going to get reimbursed for those monies, but it's looking like not in this fiscal year, so we didn't account for that in this fiscal year. If you take out the Royal Oaks pre-funding and the FEMA acquisitions, we would have ended the year a little over $450,000 to the good. So excluding those one-time items, another good solid year for the general fund and the city as a whole. And then as presented, the fiscal 15 budget has a surplus of just a little over $3,000 there. And you can see the summary numbers there. So. All right, getting into some of the meat of the general fund. In aggregate, revenues are up a little over $440,000. The third column over the increase or decrease column, you can see kind of where that's coming from, where those numbers are coming from. And then down, as I said, below the bullets there, some reasons why those numbers have adjusted the way that they've adjusted. expense side of things, up approximately $483,000 from last year. Couple of items of note down at the bottom. The Public Works Department added the extra maintenance worker 1 in the middle of last budget year, which was unbudgeted at the time, so that is being included in this budget for the first time. And then through the restructuring of the Public Works Department, there's the new Assistant Director of Public Works in there, which is effectively replacing the former utility supervisor position from the water fund. There were 4 approved or recommended expanded level items in this budget. The IT intern, part-time administrative assistant in the finance department, planning intern, and an additional street seasonal. There was 1 not recommended personnel item as well out of the building department. And then there was 1 recommended item for capital expense in the streets department. And this is just going through the rest of the changes in the expenses in the general fund. So unless there's any other high-level questions, we'll get into the operating departments.
Are we questioning the, by departments on the personnel? Are we going?
By department, yeah, okay. So the first department out of the box is the administration department. And one other thing that I failed to mention specifically, but it was covered in the slides, is that there were a few positions that were previously budgeted out of the tourism department that we've changed the accounting for those. So those are showing back up in the operating department. So the increase in personnel in the administration department of almost $61,000 isn't really that bad, because the half of the executive secretary and part of the manager's salary that was taken out of the tourism fund is now being reclassified into the administration department. So don't be too alarmed by that increase. There was 1 expanded level item, the IT intern, in this budget. Highlights on the contractual side, engineering services, the outside firm, that number is continuing to go down, I think for the 3rd year in a row, as we're getting more organized over in the Public Works Department. We're relying less on the outside engineering firm, which is allowing us to control those costs and reduce those costs as we move forward with it. Okay. The next slide is the aforementioned IT intern. Real high level on the IT intern. There's a number of bigger projects that the IT manager is working on. Specifically this year, he's working on the website, the GIS tablets for Public Works, the replacement of the computers in the squads for the police department. And in the middle of all that, there's a lot of mundane or routine tasks that get sent through the support system, such as my printer won't print, my monitor won't work, my keyboard's dirty, things of that nature that are taking away his time from working on these high-level projects. So the main thrust of this IT intern would be to assist in those more mundane tasks, to allow the IT manager to be able to work on those high-level projects, especially those that are council-driven, and would also have a pretty big hand in helping to establish a lot of the pages on the website, migrating web pages from the old website to the new website.
Brad, you keep saying this position's mundane. I don't know, I was asking Nick some questions, and I don't know, it sounds like it's a little more involved. Something about command and switches, and I don't know, he started getting technical on me, and it's a little beyond my scope, but maybe Nick should give us a little explanation on that, because you're making it sound like it's really nothing. Is it nothing, or is it something else?
I think it's a little of both, so we'll just bring Nick out and he can explain.
Come on out, Nick. You're free.
The manager is correct, it would be a little bit of both. Some of the more mundane tasks would be, as Brad mentioned, would be kind of cleaning out some wiring, cleaning up miscellaneous components that have been left from previous installations in years past. And some of the more upper level tasks would be if somebody knows, for example, command lines, is familiar with Cisco or HP switches and kind of stuff like that. They can run some of the updates that I don't have time to do, but aren't necessarily mission critical. But it's good practice to do that. So,
Mr. Wesley?
How many hours a week are we looking at for this person?
that's a good question. Really, I would kind of use them on an as-needed basis. When the website comes along, I would like the intern to be here more when there's page migrations taking place, simply because that's going to be kind of a lot of work, depending on what's left to migrate over. Really, when I see things popping up, that's kind of how I would use them as needed.
And what is the requirement that, to leave them part-time for they are not required for
Well, that
how many hours are we looking at here?
The
for a year?
budgeted amount would pull them well under part-time. They would make
How
part-time.
many hours are you looking?
I would say probably maybe 3 days a week, if necessary, and kind of shift that schedule around. Shift it around so that if we need them more, maybe 5 days 1 week and 2 days the next week, 1 day. Keep it flexible and, again, as needed. But the budgeted amount would not allow us to go over that allotted part-time.
There is a requirement if you go over so much on a part-time, they automatically.
That budgeted amount would not allow us to go over that.
That's all I want to say. I know the salary's here, but I don't know what the hours are and
Sure.
who's going to keep track of that.
Yep.
So adding this person, does that mean I'm going to get projects done a little quicker than?
That's the ultimate goal, that I can free up
So
some
I
of
don't
my
have to wait
time.
2 years for GIS to be installed on public works vehicles?
I don't know.
Is that the intention? I mean, I have no problem improving this, but the point is, I'm
Sure.
not going,
Yeah, that's the ultimate goal, is to free up some of my time so I can get some of the larger projects done. So,
This one, you'll send him out to get Nick's lunch, so he can stay here and work, right? Any other questions? Jacob?
While we have Nick out here, I just have one question. On here, IT professional services, I kind of asked Brad about that, and he had said it's due to new increase in annual maintenance contracts and additional money added for scanning services. Could you give me?
yeah, the maintenance contracts are actually Springbrook. That's about, I'd say 90% of that, and the finance director can correct me if I'm wrong. And on professional services, we do scanning every year. We scan some of our documents in. We have a lot of documents to scan in, and we take them as they come year by year. And we're also trying to get some of the previous year scanned in. So instead of coming out of the IT budget, I believe we move that to the professional services because it makes more sense.
Yeah, so if there's no more questions on that, just want to get a consensus on whether to leave it in or to remove it out of the budget.
Mr. Woods?
I thought this was just the presentation for the people. Are we voting on these slides before we get into the book?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, the slides are derived from the book.
Right, but I thought you were giving an overview and not.
Oh, correct, yeah, but we just want to, like I said, as we go through each department, just so we don't have to come back an hour later to this to see if we want to keep it in or not. I mean, we can, I guess.
We're doing auto administration.
Correct.
I thought you were doing a quick overview of the whole budget. That's why we didn't speed it up, because so everybody at home had to see what was going on, not jumping right into specific department.
So you need a yes or no
Oh.
answer on it.
Okay, yeah, the first 10 or 12 slides were the, kind of the high level, so, yeah, once we got to the admin, that was the start of the operating budget portion of the,
Then I have a complex
Question.
motion. I'll go to a motion to approve the budget, except for the expanded employee levels, pending staff coming back with some recommendations we came up with.
Second. All in favor? What?
Questions?
Any questions? Well, you can vote on any questions too. Oh, Mr. Mayor?
So we're making a motion to approve the entire budget, except for,
Excluding any expanded employee level staffing. And staff is gonna come back with some changes possible.
what changes? They've got 3 part-time positions, 4 part-time positions?
Sure.
I don't think it was changes, it was, we had some questions about other positions, so we can come back and get information on those other positions.
Wait.
Mayor?
What are the other positions? I thought, I don't know, was it 2 months ago, we were talking about expanding positions, and we were gonna hire somebody to assess the situation? We've assessed it already? Something, what happened? I don't know, 2 months ago, right? Right, we were gonna do the study? Think everybody agreed?
Did you have a question, Frank?
No, that's
Same question? Okay.
pretty much how it
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, I just looked at, we were adding all these, a half a person, a quarter of a person, a third of a person. If you didn't look and said, does it make more sense to hire a full-time person and get somebody that we can train and fill some of the holes we have and increase some of the backup to employees we have? So, that's why staff, when I didn't get to talk to Jeff till later, he was gonna come up with some numbers to see where we would sit with that.
Mayor?
I just so I'm clear. So we got, if I remember right, we have an IT intern in this budget. Somebody for finance. Yeah, well, it's right there, some guy to do some additional street seasonal and a planning intern, I think, when I asked the question, was mostly to get that website up and running, the new website. So these, I think I totaled them up, they were like 30 grand. You guys looking to do something else now?
Alderman Woods?
Yeah, was my suggestion, not staff's suggestion,
Oh,
that I threw in there to
okay.
change. If we're gonna spend 31,000 for part-timers, we keep adding part-timers. We also know that down the road, we're gonna have to add full-time people, right, with the expansion of the Elgin O'Hare. So why would we not want to invest in getting an employee that we would keep? So if we could get somebody that could fill those functions and also act as a backup to HR when HR is down and do some other things, you know, that was my thought process for coming forward with a full-time guy instead of adding all these part-timers or half-timers or quarter-timers. Well, that would increase the budget, 25 to 30,000. That's what Jeff was
Wait a
gonna
minute.
get some info.
Hold on.
Mayor?
So if we increase the budget, I think, what'd you guys show, $3,500 surplus? So we're gonna, I mean, $20,000, if, I'm sure we can find $20,000. But this one guy's gonna do some additional streets. We're gonna put him in HR. HR is kind of a temperamental spot. I don't think we wanna put
Almost every company I know has a backup to HR.
a flex guy.
Mr. Wilson?
Many people, many office administrators and executive secretaries form HR functions. So it's not unheard of to have them, to have some experience, so every time we lose somebody, at least we have a body there.
Right. Sorry, Mike.
Go ahead, Mr. Wilson.
Yeah, just say, point of clarification, the street seasonal would not be specifically
Correct.
part of this new person's task. It would be more this building that we would be talking about, not the street seasonal.
Pretty much layman terms is like a floater. I mean,
Right, no.
someone to cover all aspects of the city hall while somebody's out.
The motion indicated, I thought, was all employee, all part-time seasonal. So are we, the street seasonal wasn't supposed to be part of the discussion, so we approving the street seasonal?
We're approving the street seasonal. Let me take it, administrative, excluding any administrative expanded level employees. Is that more descriptive?
Sir Wesley?
I would like the street seasonal be in it, to look at, because I'm not sold on that position.
Frank, do you have some?
Yeah, I'm just really not clear on, I guess what we're saying is we want to take these three out and come up with a job description that fits all three of these part-time positions? Is that what I'm hearing?
Mhm.
And then you also will show us the difference as far as what it costs for that blanket person versus this. Yeah, I guess I'd be willing to look at that.
Mr. Murmas?
Like Alderman Wood said, I just kind of found out about it, staff just found out about it. I can tell you that it's definitely gonna cost more than the interns and part-timers, so it will cost more. So probably about 25,000-ish, give or take, I'd say, is a fair number.
Right, that's what I just said a minute ago, 25 to 30, it would probably be expanded 25 to 30,000, depending on the level.
So,
From my research, I didn't know what you found.
so if we wanted to go that route, then we haven't passed the deficit budget ever, so we'd have to come up with $22,000 extra from somewhere else.
And I can see where Alderman Woods is coming up with it also. I mean, why not bring someone on board to be able to do all the functions and stuff before we get to Thorndale Expressway? Mr. Jacob?
And just to add to that, I mean, right now, we have several positions that we have no backup to. It's nice to have somebody that could step in and somebody gets sick or something, could fill a position.
Do we have a motion to, there's a first and a second. Any other questions? Mr. Eugene?
So what are we doing with the seasonal position? Because someone's going to have to explain that one to me. I know you just want that focus on. Are we taking it out? I mean, are we leaving that seasonal in there for the street? I have a couple of questions on that one.
I was leaving it in, but if you got some questions, we certainly want to answer the
Yeah,
questions.
I do. So are we,
Go ahead.
my question is the seasonal, I mean, is that because we looking at launching 2 fleets of lawnmower service companies out there, or what are we doing? Why are we adding that seasonal? Adding additional than what we hire all the
Mr.
time?
Murmas?
What we did this year is you'll notice a couple of items related to landscaping and improved looks throughout town. That's one of them. Last year, it was made bluntly clear that we needed to step up our efforts, so we've done everything we could to suggest stepping up those efforts. Better equipment, we already added a full-time employee. We think that this added seasonal employee for the cost will really make an additional difference and step up the look of town even more. So if we want to go for a nicer looking town, especially in the summertime, that's why we've got this added seasonal in there, because we think that could make an even better difference.
So,
Go ahead. Yes, go ahead.
so my question is for the seasonal is what, mowing lawns, what are we doing here? I mean, maybe Matt could explain what the seasonal job is, because we approved a full-timer for last year for help out with beautifying Wooddale. We gave a full-time position, now we adding an additional streetscape committee, or, seasonal. So I know it's only $10,000, but I'll tell you one thing. Go ahead.
Keep in mind, we
Adding four, now you're adding
we
five.
do seem to, every other month, pick up another area we have to mow. We've got added FEMA lots now. Things have changed just last summer. We've got more things to landscape. I mean, it's cheap labor for what we thought was important to the council.
We have to,
First, my memory, what do we landscape? We don't do clock garden, we contract it out. Okay, we added flowers here. I mean, I just don't,
Again, like I said, we have a lot of areas that we mow. We have a map of everything that we mow, and each summer, it seems like we get more to the map. And we get calls and complaints all summer long about the lawn is too long. Cut it. Well, we need guys to cut it.
because we have rulers now for the grass, how long it is.
Mr. Woods?
Yeah, I mean, just with this Addison sidewalk, we added 5 acres. With the properties we just bought, there's 5 more lots in different locations. So you gotta go to 150 Addison Road, then come back and cut, 242 Carter, then come to 277, and then 270. So that alone, I mean, I don't know how long it takes to cut the grass, but that might take one guy all day just to do those things.
Peter volunteering to do it. Jacob?
Just a comment, right now it takes roughly about 3 weeks to do all the public properties that the city owns, and I think this is to help get that down to 2 weeks, possibly, 1.5 weeks instead of 3 weeks for all the lawns being mowed in the town, that are city-owned properties.
Mr. Woods?
I'm understanding that the seasonal won't be hired unless we're gonna have 2 crews going? Or how is this seasonal gonna work? I mean,
Ms. Murmas?
I can let Matt speak to the details of the,
because we hired the full-timer to do landscaping. Go ahead.
Mr. York?
Yes, the purpose of hiring an additional seasonal, like the manager said, was to help increase the level of service that we can provide to the citizens of the city of Wooddale. By sending more people out, we can cut grass faster, we can keep the weeds down, we can do the mulch beds, make sure the weeds are pulled out of there. One of the main things that I was informed of from staff when I had my initial meetings with them when I got hired was the requests from the board, other management staff, and the residents about how the town looks. It's very important to me that the city looks good in the summertime to make sure that the grass is cut. It's what everybody sees. We need to make sure that it looks good. So hiring this additional seasonal will help us with that. Other things in the budget will also help us with that, but having an extra set of hands out on the roads to assist with the grass cutting, the weeding, and also to do some of the other projects that we have to do. We have asphalt work that will need to be done this year. We have tree trimming that needs to be done. So to alleviate full-time employees from having to assist with lawn care maintenance by having the seasonal available will allow us to do those other projects as well. So it's not just for landscaping, it's an ultimate department-wide projects.
Wesley?
By giving you this seasonal, we give you a full-timer, now we're giving you a seasonal. I have to say, by this spring and this summer, the city better be in good shape on maintaining the properties. There should be no problem of getting, since we're giving you the labor now, there should be no problem getting the work done. And I don't want to sit here and say, well, we can't get it done, we can't get it done, we don't have enough time, we don't have enough time. I don't want to hear that excuse anymore. And I don't want the city manager coming back or the public works director coming back and saying, well, maybe we should sub it out. We give you the man hours now, there should be no problems now, period. And the performance of how the city looks in the spring and the summer.
Anyone else? That's it.
Yeah, that's fine.
Anything else on it? You have anything? Go ahead.
I know there's a motion on the floor, and there was some, the in and out, the seasonal. So we're just clarifying that approve the old budget minus those 3 expanded level items, and then we'll come back at the next committee meeting and clean those up. Present our findings, suggestions,
Correct.
ideas.
And leave that, yeah. So you had a motion, a second? All those in favor?
Roll call.
Yeah, I'll do roll call. I'm not gonna try to pass it through. Take roll call, please.
Alderman Lazara.
Yes.
Alderman Jacob.
Yes.
Alderman Sizmarsky.
Yes.
Alderman Roy Wesley.
Yes,
Alderman Woods.
Yes.
Alderman Eugene Wesley.
come on, don't be the only one.
Keep us waiting. Motion carries. Have any items to be considered in future meetings? No? Need a motion for adjournment.
I'll make the motion.
Motion carries.
We gotta vote first. All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
No.